In 1970, Mazda introduced the Capella as a mid-level model slotted between the Familia and the Luce. In Japan, the original Capella was powered by either a 1.5 or a 1.6-liter single overhead cam engine, or there was an optional rotary version sold as the Capella Rotary. The rotary version made its way to export markets, including North America, in 1970 for the 1971 model year, where it was sold as the RX-2. Initially, the RX-2 rotary export was the only version we got. But after all, rotary power is the future. Don't you know that by 1980, 85% of all cars on the road will be rotary? But in 1971, the 1.6-liter version made its way here to be sold as the Mazda 616. And that's where we're going to start our story today, as I take you through the evolution of Mazda's North American Capella export.
That's all it took, yeah, just one look. That's all it took, yeah, the more you look. The more you like.
The Mazda 616 was built with the 70s in mind, and like the RX-2, came in both coupe and sedan forms. I think it's kind of a cool looking car actually. I like the 4 round eyes up front, we've got chrome bumpers, chrome trim, I like these vintage Mazda hubcaps. I will say the RX-2 has circular taillights though, which is much cooler. Fun fact, in 1970 all Capellas had rectangular headlights. In most markets, rotary Capellas switched to round headlights in late 1971, with all Capellas adopting circular headlights for 1972. The rectangle headlights never made it to North America though, all RX-2s have round headlights here. There's also a cool emblem on the C-pillar. These are on all Capella models up until 1974. I couldn't find confirmation on what it exactly represents, but it looks like flying wings, and it's actually not too different from the main logo they use today. The 616 proudly wears a 1600 badge on the grille, and behind that grille, power comes from a 1.6-liter single overhead cam engine, rated at 88 horsepower, sending powers to the rear wheels through a 4-on-the-floor transmission. You could get a 3-speed auto as an option though. Standard features include front disc brakes, 2-speed wipers, a lockable fuel cap, armrests, a cigarette lighter, a glove box light, and on coupes you got a locking glove box, front seatbelt sensors, a center console, a wood-like steering wheel, a clock, and almost full instrumentation with a tach and an amp meter. I'm not sure why some of these features weren't standard on the sedan. I guess the coupe was positioned as the higher model. For 1972, the model was updated with a 1.8-liter engine for North America and was therefore renamed as the 618. This is why number naming cars based on displacement is so dumb in my opinion. Every time you upgrade the engine, you gotta rename the car. What was wrong with Capella? It's the 3rd brightest star in the northern celestial hemisphere, I'll have you know. But seriously, why do Japanese brands always name their cars with English words, but then not use those English words in English-speaking markets? You know, I would get the number naming thing if they were doing it to use the numbered names in non-English speaking markets, but most of the time they literally do the opposite of that. Anyways, this 1.8-liter engine was known by the designation VB, and it's different from the 1.8-liter VC engine that Mazda was using in most other markets around this time. This engine also was used in the B1800 and Ford Courier pickup trucks here, as well as the Luce 1800. It was rated at 98 horsepower and 108 pound-feet of torque. However, like the 616, the 618 would also last just 1 year here. After that, the only first-gen Capella export offered here was the rotary version, so let's talk about the RX-2. Like I already mentioned, the RX-2 gets the cooler, circular taillights, and the grille sports an RE badge, to let people know you're driving a rotary, the engine of the future. After all, Mazda's rotary engines make power equivalent to piston engines with twice the displacement, and just look at how many less moving parts there are. That's a good thing, since you'll be rebuilding these frequently. The RX-2 is powered by the 12A rotary, a 2-rotor engine with just under 1.2 liters of displacement, but that's all you need. In America, it was rated at 120 horsepower and 115 pound-feet of torque, but in other markets this engine was rated as high as 130 horsepower, but American emissions restricted it a bit. Hey losers, still driving piston engines I see. Not me. Rotary power is the future. Don't you know that by 1980, 85% of all cars on the road will be rotary? I don't know, man. Piston engines are proven technology. Who says rotary engines are gonna last as long? Oh, don't worry about that. Mazda offers a 2-year, 24,000-mile warranty on these, so you know it's gonna be good. If it was gonna be unreliable, they would have had to give a much longer warranty. Yeah, I I don't think that's how that works, dude. Like the 616 and 618, it came in 2 and 4-door versions. The transmission is again a 4-speed manual or optional 3-speed auto, and inside it's basically the same as the 616, 618s. It's the same car really, with most of the same standard features. A radio is an option, but if you get it, it comes with some classy wood trim to let your date know that you spent some extra cash on this model. The RX-2 would continue to be sold in 1973 and 1974 in North America, and while it continued through 77 or 78 in some markets, 74 was our last year for it, and there was a bit of a Capella hiatus here until the second generation arrived in 1979 as the first official 626. 74 was a refresh year though, and does have some cosmetic changes. There are new bumpers, and on the front end, the turn signals are now integrated into the bumper instead of being on the body above it. The back has quite a different rear fascia with new taillights and a tailgate panel. I like the two-tone color option, and look at the cool Mazda accessory striping you could get. I do miss the wings though. The C-pillar emblem has been deleted. A shame. I thought it gave it some class. The RX-2 continues to offer decent standard features for a car in its class, including a center console, rear defroster, rear floor courtesy lights, and mechanical seat memory on the coupes. A radio remains an option though, as does the automatic transmission, radio antenna, and air conditioning. An almost complete gauge cluster is still standard, on sedans too, not just the coupes like the 616 and 618. John, it's a rotary engine. You don't want to know the oil pressure.
We looked at BMW and Accord because we wanted a refined road car. Then we looked at and drove this new Mazda 626. That's all it took.
Just one look. That's all it took. Yeah, just one
It's 1979 and one look was all it took to fall in love with the new Mazda Capella, the first official 626 in North America. I probably don't have to tell you based on the shirt I'm wearing that this is my favorite generation 626. But if you like this shirt, it's available in many different colors on my website, AccuRadvice.com, the best website on the internet for novelty car shirts. For 1979, the 626 continues to be offered in both coupe and sedan forms, with coupes positioned as the higher model. I honestly really like the styling of these. I'm not sure if that's a popular opinion or not, but I just think they're cool looking. Especially the coupe version, which is a hardtop. Now, if you look at pictures of these on the internet, you'll notice that some of them have a different front end shape where the grille kind of slopes backwards and the top of it isn't flush with the headlights. And there's a different hood as well. I originally thought this was a market difference as none of the US models have this front end, but actually in most markets this car came with either a 1.6, a 1.8, or a 2-liter engine, and 1.6 and 1.8 liter models have this front end shape, while the 2-liter models, for some reason, Mazda gave this more flush front end. In North America, the 626 only came with the 2-liter, which explains why all of ours have this front end. Now in 1979, the sedan gets much more chrome trim than the coupe and chrome door handles. I think this is because they were trying to make the coupe more sporty looking, and so aside from black trim and door handles, it gets fully black bumpers, a blacked out grille, and black headlight trim. I actually like the chrome trim better though, and Mazda will change this, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. I also really like how they've integrated these white running lights into the turn signal. It's kind of a weird design thing, I guess, but it makes these things unique. If that lens was all amber, this would look like just any other car from 1980. Let's take a look at the interior. Coupe models get this gauge cluster with a tach, but an ammeter is no longer. You do get this electronic check panel on coupes though, which includes indicator lights for low washer fluid, low fuel, a burnt out brake light, even a battery light. No, not the generator light. This is the light to advise you when it's time to add more battery fluid. Battery fluid? How dumb do you think we are? I know there's no such thing as battery or blinker fluid. Well, actually, these are the days before sealed maintenance-free batteries, so this light is there to advise you when it's time to add more distilled water. Sedans get this more basic cluster. An analog clock is standard on both models though, as is a center console with an armrest, 60/40 split folding rear seats, 2 glove boxes, door pockets, an electric trunk release, rear defroster, and an AM/FM radio. A powered driver's mirror is standard on the coupe, and air conditioning remains an option on both models. I quite like the look of this dash overall, and the coupe steering wheel looks to be shared with the RX-7. The 626 also shares some of its suspension design with the RX-7, including a rear anti-roll bar on coupes, which can be added to the sedan as an option. The weight distribution on these things is 4951. I'm assuming that's the coupe, but Mazda doesn't actually specify. The sedan gets a 3-spoke steering wheel, which also looks pretty good. As mentioned, the engine is now a 2-liter, and power ratings are initially 80 horsepower and 105 pound-feet of torque. A little less than previous previously, I know, but in the late 70s and early 80s, emissions was really choking everything down here. I read that it gets significantly worse in 1981, with further emissions junk added, which according to Car and Driver really robs power from the upper RPM range, and by their testing increased 0 to 60 time by 5.5 seconds, despite a horsepower loss of only 6 from the 79 model. Well, all that crap would need to be deleted anyway. This engine was also used in the Mazda B2000 and Ford Courier trucks. The 5-speed manual was still the standard transmission, and the 3-speed auto is offered as an option. In 1980, Mazda gets rid of the excess black trim on the coupe, and it now has the same bumpers as the sedan, as well as the chrome door handles and chrome trim around the grille and headlights, front and back windows. Looks much better if you ask me. Further cosmetic enhancements come for 1981 as Mazda gives the model a subtle but very effective facelift. There are new bumpers and a new grille, but the whole front end looks much better because the grille has been lengthened slightly to line up with the headlights and eliminate this gap between them, so the whole face of the car is now one unbroken line. There are also new taillights which look a little more similar to what's going to be coming on the next generation, and I think these look a little better as well. Both body styles get some better wheel options, and I especially like these optional aluminum wheels you could get on the coupe. Inside there's a new gauge cluster with different half-moon gauges, and the analog clock is now digital. A remote fuel door release is now standard, and you could get a sunroof as an option. There are 2 trim levels now. Either body style can be had in base trims, which are known as the Sport Coupe and Sedan, or the upper luxury model, easily identified by luxury badges on the front fenders. The luxury trim adds the tack, 4 additional indicator lights to your check panel, power mirrors to the sedan, power windows, power steering, a tilt wheel, cruise control, a 4-speaker stereo, rear seat armrest, dual map lights, an extra wide body side molding, and power door locks on the sedan. Well, like the brochure says, everyone travels first class in a 626 luxury sedan. There's actually one other really cool feature the luxury package adds, an illuminated exterior keyhole. There's a little light that comes on inside the driver's keyhole automatically when you lift the driver's door handle. So if it's really dark out, you can actually see where to slide the key in. That's a really cool feature if you ask me. I realize it becomes obsolete as soon as keyless entry becomes a thing, but for older cars like this, I think that's really neat. I don't know if there were some other cars that had this back then too, but this is the first time I've ever seen it. Coupes continue to use the RX-7 steering wheel, but sedans now get the more rectangular 2-spoke wheel, which I don't think looks as good, but certainly looks a lot more 80s and a lot less 70s. Oh, quit calling it an RX-7 wheel to make this thing sound cooler than it is. It's also used in the GLC, so big deal, bro. But wait, what is this I'm seeing on the non-tack cluster? There's a 3rd gauge in there. An amp meter is back? Or maybe a voltmeter? I can't tell with such a small picture, but only on base models? Because there certainly isn't one on the luxury cluster with the tack. Try as I might, I could not find a picture of a non-tack cluster from an 81, 82, 626 on the internet, so I don't know. I'm a bit confused. But it is quite possible that this is some weird cluster in the brochure that they didn't end up putting in the production model, or it could be from another market. Automakers will reuse pictures in their brochures sometimes across different markets.
I found the absence of a voltmeter and oil temperature gauge a bit strange in a machine meant for sporty driving.
Speaking of markets, in most places outside of North America, 1981 brought flush mount headlights, but I'm actually glad we didn't get that here. Something about this front end just looks better with the old school standardized lights if you ask me. To me, an 81-82 North American front end 626 coupe with the 4-spoke aluminum wheels is my favorite. And even though I don't normally like green cars, this green color, which Mazda calls lime green metallic, is I think the best color for it. I'd love to get one just like this, but I can't afford one, so I made this shirt instead. Brakes on the 2nd gen 626 continue to be front disc rear drums. Now in the Motor Week review they were not impressed with the 1982 626's braking performance at all, but you only need brakes to stop, and who wants to stop when you're looking this good? Hey losers, what do you think of my new 626? It's one sleek little coupe, isn't it? It's okay I guess, but what engine's in there? I couldn't smell you coming this time, that can't be a rotary. Yeah, didn't you say something ridiculous like most cars on the road would be rotary by now? Oh no, I never said that.
Introduced in early 1979, this 2,680-pound car was the final step back to health for a company pushed near bankruptcy for making high-performance and low-mileage rotary engines.
Not much changes for 1982, although I did read the suspension was tightened back up a bit after being softened for 81, which led to some handling criticisms. 1982 is the last model year for this generation, and 1983 brings the 626 on a new front-wheel drive platform. So, let's see what Mazda's done with it.
Experience a new high-performance road car. Experience the 1983 Mazda 626 Sport Coupe. Experience its all-new 2-liter overhead cam engine, advanced front-wheel drive, and patented independent rear suspension. Experience Mazda 626.
The jingle was catchier in the second generation. For 1983, the Mazda 626 is on an all-new front-drive platform. Mazda put quite a significant amount of effort into this new platform, and it paid off. Winning Car of the Year in Japan for 1982, Car of the Year by Wheels magazine for 1983, and 1983 Import Car of the Year by Motor Trend. Imports and domestics competed in separate categories for Motor Trend back then, and if you're curious what domestic car won the award alongside the 626 in 83, the answer is the Renault Alliance. I know, we talked about that last week. It also came in 5th for the European Car of the Year in 1984, at the time the highest ranking a Japanese car had ever received over there. Now some of you might be thinking, oh, what could be so great about this thing? They made it front-wheel drive and now it looks like a box with taillights that look like a control panel from Star Trek. Look, I'm always a little disappointed to see a rear drive platform go away too, mostly because they're just so uncommon nowadays. But in the 80s, everyone was kind of making the switch to front drive platforms unless it was a sports car or a higher end luxury car. And I understand it does make sense for a family car like this marketed to the masses. And look, if you want to do donuts and go brap brap, they've still got the RX-7. Still though, decent performance and handling was a priority for Mazda with the 626, as it usually is, since they were going to call it a sports sedan and in much of the marketing refer to it as a world-class road car. So how did they do? Well, it might be front-wheel drive, but much effort was made to reduce torque steer with a driveline center bearing so the drive shafts could be of equal length. The rear suspension was now independent, and the front suspension used lower control arms, which were unequal in length to balance left and right steering response. To reduce driveline vibration, motor mounts for the new transverse-mounted engine were now liquid-filled, and according to the brochure at least, Mazda tested these prototypes in the numbing winters of Canada, the dust-choked Australian outback, and even the cobble streets of Belgium. And while this car might look like it's made out of a bunch of rectangles, the coupe model actually matches the RX-7's drag coefficient of 0.34. The 1983 626 was sold in 3 body styles and 5 different models: the Sport Sedan, Sport Coupe, the Luxury Sport Sedan and Sport Coupe, and a 5-door hatchback model which Mazda called a 5-door touring sedan. I don't know. In the 80s, Japanese manufacturers seemed to refuse to actually call any of their hatchbacks.
At Mazda, a 5-door hatchback is called a touring sedan. Don't ask us why.
The 5-door touring sedan was positioned at the top as the most expensive model. Luxury coupes and touring sedans came with electronically controlled variable shock absorbers, which have 3 modes the driver can choose from: Sport mode for a stiffer ride but more responsive handling, Normal mode, self-explanatory, or Auto. In Auto, the system will operate in normal mode for what Mazda calls a soft boulevard ride at speeds of up to 50 miles an hour, after which point it will automatically switch to the stiffer setting. Let's examine the styling. Up front there are now quad headlights with clear lens running lights trimming the sides. The turn signals are in their typical early 80s location, down in the bumper. On the back, coupes, at least for the first few model years, have a faux taillight panel that runs across the entire length of the trunk lid, connecting the 2 taillight assemblies. Sedans have a panel that extends onto the trunk lid, but only slightly. Hatchbacks have slightly different taillights that include amber lens turn signals. Sport coupes and sport sedans have 14-inch wheels with chrome center caps and trim rings, while luxury models have full flush wheel covers. Optional alloy wheels are available as well, which look kind of like the alloys from the previous generation, but more flush, I guess in an attempt to look more modern. This is the 80s now, after all. Flush-looking spokeless wheels were in style for a while there. Taking a look inside the car, it's the 80s, so the drapes match the carpet. Wait, I think that's the wrong analogy for this. The dash matches the seats. And the carpet. The gauge cluster is actually very similar to last year, except the temp and fuel gauges are now moved to the center to make room for even more lights in your electronic check panel. They've also added some horizontal lines that run across it because it's the 80s and that's how you made things look futuristic back then. Since it's the 80s, there is of course an optional digital cluster available on the luxury sport coupe and touring sedan, which I'm just going to call this a hatchback from now on. I don't want to keep saying touring sedan.
A digital package is optional if you must.
The The dash actually differs a bit depending on the body style. Coupes in the hatchback model have control pods flanking the gauge cluster, which in the brochure Mazda calls the left and right nacelles.
The plasma flow to the nacelles is uneven due to injector lock.
These nacelles carry the switches for the hazards, standard rear defroster, and headlights, which wasn't too uncommon in the 80s, but slightly less conventional is the wiper controls housed in the starboard nacelle. As cool as the pod switches are, I don't know if I would like the wiper controls there. Since I live in BC where the weather constantly switches back and forth from raining to not raining, I think it's better having those switches closer and more easily controlled on a stock. I don't like doing the NPC driver thing where your wipers are still on high even though the rain stopped an hour ago and your turn signal is still on from the last exit you took 30 miles back. Well, that's why you should like modern cars. They often have automatic rain sensing windshield wipers. Sedan models, however, do not have any nacelles, and the wipers and headlights are controlled by more conventional steering column stocks.
While some found the heating and air conditioning controls overly complex, there were no complaints.
This is complex? How? It's got very standard slider controls for vent settings and temp. Is it the pull for recirculation that confused them, or the very simple push button fan speed buttons? For these fan speed buttons, the fan speed was indicated in a little window next to them that kind of operates like an old school flip style electric clock. One thing that is a bit strange and gimmicky about the climate system though is the center vents, which oscillate. A bit of a strange feature, and I'm not sure how necessary it really is, but the 626 does also have these lower dash vents for both the driver and passenger, a feature which I do approve of. A digital clock is standard on all trims. Where is it? Well, you can't see it in this picture, but don't worry, according to Mazda, it's just a glance away. Glance away? What? Oh, there it is, down in the center console. This is a glance away? Oh, I guess if you consider staring down at the floor while you're driving a glance away, then yes, it is. Another strange interior feature is the warning chimes. Now, the 626 might not talk to you like a Maxima, but it does play you a little song if you open the door with the key in the ignition. Well, that was weird. Items like interior trunk and fuel door releases, a cargo area lamp, 6-way adjustable seats outfitted in velour upholstery, folding rear seats, a tachometer, a tilt steering wheel, and a locking illuminated glove box are standard across all models. Moving up to the luxury trim in sedan or coupe adds power mirrors, 10-way adjustable seats, pin striping, cruise control, power windows and door locks on the sedan, map lights, and the illuminated driver's door and ignition keyhole. Glad to see that cool feature is still around. Now you might be wondering, where are the power window switches? They don't appear to be on the doors. They are not. Instead, see this thing on the center console that looks like an arcade gamepad? That's your power window switches. And the joystick above it is your audio balance and fader control. That's not on all models, I guess it depends on which radio option you choose, but pair it with the optional graphic EQ and you could be the envy of all audiophile nerds in the 80s. AC is an option to all models, and a power sunroof is optional on luxury and hatchback models. Power steering is standard on all luxury models and optional on the sport, coupe, and sedan. Unfortunately, headroom is one of the few shortcomings with this 626 generation, and getting the sunroof only makes it worse. Another shortcoming is fake stitching. Hatchbacks come standard with a rear window wiper and washer. Time to look under the hood, which now has the hinges in the proper location. All models are powered by a new 2-liter engine, still carbureted, rated at 83 horsepower and 110 pound-feet of torque. In its day, it was considered a peppy engine, though I suppose most people's standards for that have changed somewhat since then. The standard transmission remains a 5-speed with a 3-speed auto optional on all models. The brakes are still front disc rear drum, but the larger front brakes perform very well with much less rear end swing than was common in front drive cars at the time. In addition to all the awards I mentioned at the beginning of this chapter, when Motor Week tested the hatchback against 4 other 1983 family liftbacks, the Mazda 626 was their clear favorite, beating out the Pontiac Phoenix, Nissan Stanza, and even the Toyota Camry. The Mazda 626 had superior handling and braking to its competitors, nice styling, and a fit and finish that was only matched by the Toyota. In 1984, Mazda changes the trim name slightly, with the lower trims now referred to as the Deluxe Sport Coupe and Deluxe Sport Sedan. The electronic variable shock absorber system is added as standard to the Deluxe Coupe, and there are new slotted wheel covers for all the luxury models. They also added a diesel sedan 626 to the lineup for '84, but that one sold terribly in North America. It made 60 horsepower and 89 pound-feet of torque. 1985 comes and goes without any notable changes to the 626. 1986, however, brings a number of updates, including a cosmetic refresh and a new GT trim level with a turbo engine. Starting with the styling, the most obvious change is new flush mount headlights and a new grille. A very European feature, headlight washers are added to GT trims. On the back, coupes and sedans no longer get faux taillight panels that extend onto the trunk lid. It's just black trim there now. That kind of seems like a cost-cutting change. The taillights themselves are tweaked slightly with smaller reverse lights that have moved up to the second floor. Hatchback taillights are unchanged. The interior has been significantly updated with new steering wheels, a new gauge cluster with round, speedo, and tactiles, and the indicator lights are now arranged in a square instead of a strip along the bottom. The switch pod nacelles are gone. There are still a few push buttons on the side of the cluster, but just for rear defroster and hazards. The dash and gauge pod design no longer differs between body styles. If equipped, the power window switches are still in the center console, but they're a bit more conventional looking now and no longer share the area with a weird joystick audio fader. The clock has been moved away from here as well, up to a much better location on the dash. Now this is just a glance away, Mazda. The climate controls have been simplified. You don't even need to be able to read to understand them now, so I hope no one complained about these ones. The electronic adaptable suspension is still a thing, but now in auto mode it's computer controlled and reads sensors to automatically vary the setting based on road conditions and driving conditions. It's now optional on the luxury models and standard on the GT. On deluxe and luxury models, the 2-liter is now fuel injected and horsepower is up to 93 and torque to 115. The GT engine is a new turbocharged 2-liter which puts out 120 horsepower and 150 pound-feet of torque, giving it quite the performance upgrade. Most racers though will likely think there are nowhere near enough turbo badges on it, with the only one being on the trunk lid. The GT also gets 4-wheel disc brakes, dual exhaust outlets, 15-inch alloy wheels, a honeycomb grille, bronze-tinted glass, and an alarm system. The GT was available in all 3 body styles. 1987 was the final model year for this generation, and it got some new color options as well as a new 4-speed automatic transmission should you be inclined to choose one with that unfortunate option. Right now, someone somewhere is typing an angry comment about how much better automatics are and how stuck in the past I am.
I look forward to your angry letters.
I think it's safe to say, based on all the awards it won, it was a pretty good car for its time. In my opinion, Mazda was making some cool stuff in the 80s and early 90s. After they were done with their little rotary obsession and before Ford got a controlling interest, that was a cool time for them. I do want to mention there were 2 kind of interesting rebadge versions of this 626. The Australian market got the Ford Telstar, which to my North American eyes has some very strange styling indeed. I mean, what is this front end? Also, in South Korea, Kia sold their own versions of the Capella under license, called the Kia Concorde, and a lower trim version called the Kia Capital. Various facelift versions of this were sold all the way up until 1996, with the later few years marketed ironically as the new Concorde and new Capital.
Careful now, this one's mine.
The more you look, the more you like.
Hey losers, check out my new 626. Oh, not this again. What gimmick are you pushing now? No one was impressed by your oscillating vents. Hey, that's gonna catch on, trust me. But I'm actually here to tell you about the revolutionary new 4-wheel steering system my 626 has. Hey, that's my thing. Not anymore. The 626 has it all. Oscillating vents, self-adjusting suspension, 4-wheel steering, a turbocharged engine. This really is a world-class family car. And if you don't believe me, just ask James Garner. Who?
You wouldn't believe how many families I've recommended the Mazda 626 to. They just love the giant interior. The 626 not only comes as a traditional 4-door sedan, which I bet you thought you were looking at. Surprise! You've been looking at this slick 5-door touring sedan. My station wagon.
Oh, just call it a damn hatchback. For 1988, the 626 is again available in a 4-door sedan and 5-door versions, but there is no more coupe. Well, actually there is. They've just split it off into its own nameplate, the MX-6. The MX-6 is pretty cool, but I'm not really going to focus on it too much in this video, but don't worry MX-6 fans, that's only because in addition to its own nameplate, it's also going to get its own video. Next week's video is going to cover the MX-6, and I will also be covering and comparing it to its Ford cousin, the Probe, so I hope you'll tune in next week for that. As for the 626, a deluxe sports sedan serves as the base, a luxury trim is available in sedan or hatchback forms. Then there's the turbo model, they're not calling it the GT anymore. You can get that in sedan or hatch, and then there's the new four-wheel steering model, which uses the turbo engine but only comes in sedan form. But before we get into the minutiae details of options and trims, let's look at the new styling. It's pretty conservative looking from the outside, really not the sort of car you'd expect to have a turbo engine or four-wheel steering. If you get a model with a turbo engine like last year, no more than one badge designates it as so. It's not trying to be flashy and attract attention, and I like that about it. I think both sedan and hatchback versions are nice looking vehicles. As for the interior, it's also very nice, very standard late 80s Japanese. It kind of reminds me of some Toyota interiors from the era. I like the 3-spoke steering wheel and the center stack. The radio and climate controls are very era typical, but I think the radio is positioned way too low. I like the door panels, they have courtesy lights, nice fabrics, a proper grab handle, and I didn't spot any fake stitching this time. The gauge cluster is also Japanese typical for the era, but nice, with plenty of dummy lights to account for the lack of analog gauges that most of their buyers wouldn't know how to interpret anyway.
This is easily done by thoroughly reading the owner's manual. It's best to know what that idiot light means before it flashes on.
There is still an optional digital cluster if you're still looking for that mid-80s charm. Yes, the oscillating vents are still there, but you can turn them off if they annoy you or they break, and the lower dash vents are still there as well, a feature which was becoming less and less common by the late 80s. 60/40 folding rear seats are standard on both body styles, but the hatch of course gives you the most cargo room and is therefore the more practical model. And I don't think it looks any worse than the sedan, in fact I kinda like it better. But for some reason, 5 doors like this were sort of out of style for a while in the late 80s and 90s. Maybe that's why Mazda didn't want to call it a hatchback, because they thought no one wanted hatchbacks. And maybe people didn't, I don't know. This was slightly before my time, but I don't see why people didn't want them. By 1989, the 626 was really the only Japanese 5-door on sale, even though it wasn't called one. I mean, if you wanted a 5-door, you either bought this or what? A Corsica with rear seats that don't even split fold? Those were kind of your main options. I guess there was also the Geo Prism 5-door, which was essentially a Corolla, but those were a little lower end with quite a bit of a smaller engine. Speaking of the engine, all models get a new 2.2-liter engine with 3 valves per cylinder. On non-turbo models, it makes 110 horsepower and 130 pound-feet of torque, while the turbo version is rated at 145 horsepower and 190 pound-feet. All models come standard with the 5-speed, and the 4-speed auto is optional, with one exception. The 4-wheel steer model, for some reason, comes auto only. I guess they were marketing the 4-wheel steer as more of a premium feature than a performance one, and I realized by the late 80s manuals were already starting to get shunned by many American drivers. I guess if you wanted a performance-oriented model with a stick, you were supposed to buy the MX-6 Coupe, but oddly in the US, that wasn't even offered with 4-wheel steer for 1988. It was a 1-year only option for 1989, but that was it. Mazda's 4-wheel steering system didn't seem to collect as much praise as Honda's system did on the Prelude. It might be because Mazda's system was more complex, controlled with electronics and hydraulics, as opposed to Honda's purely mechanical system. Mazda's system from the get-go had issues with the power steering pump not being able to keep up with it, and even had some issues where the power steering wouldn't operate at all if you accelerated from a stop with the wheels turned all the way in either direction. On top of that, when Car and Driver did comparisons of the 4-wheel steer 626 and Prelude against 2-wheel steer 626 and Preludes, there were basically no tests where the 4-wheel steer 626 outperformed the 2-wheel steer one. In fact, it was quite the opposite. The unfortunate thing is, some of the test results weren't really a result of the 626 4-wheel steering system itself, but rather the inferior configuration that it was exclusively sold in. Mazda's automatic adjusting suspension system is standard on all 2-wheel steer turbo models, but you can't get it on the 4-wheel steer model. At the end of the day, if the 4-wheel steering model doesn't perform any better compared to the 2-wheel steering models on sale, what's the point of buying it? But Mazda's lack of success with the 4-wheel steering system comparatively to Honda might also be as simple as the fact that, save for one model year, they refused to put it in an actual sports car with the proper transmission. Count me out of the market for a 4-wheel steer 626 with an auto. I'll just take a turbo hatch with the 5-speed. It's called a touring sedan. Whatever. I hope Mazda got some more mileage out of this four-wheel steer system in other markets. I know outside of North America, the four-wheel steering was offered on all model years of the first generation MX-6, because if not, that was a lot of development money that went nowhere. Your basic deluxe sedan, also known as the DX model, comes with 14-inch wheels, full wheel covers, power steering, and a tilt steering column. Cruise control, AC, aluminum alloy wheels, a cassette stereo, and of course the auto transmission are options. Moving up to the luxury or LX trim in either sedan or hatch will give you power mirrors, body-colored bumpers, a tinted upper windshield band, intermittent wipers, see-through headrests, map pockets, and upgraded cloth and carpeted kick panels on the doors, a full center console, power windows and door locks, now located on the doors, map lights, the oscillating vents, a standard cassette player, and an automatic power antenna. The automatic adjusting suspension can be added as an option, and you can also add a power sunroof, compact disc player, an alarm, and the digital gauge cluster. The two-wheel steer turbo models come standard with AAS, four-wheel disc brakes, 15-inch alloy wheels, and ABS can be added as an option. As mentioned, the four-wheel steer sedan comes without the adjustable suspension, but ABS is standard, and you also get body-colored mirrors and body-colored white alloy wheels, which are kinda cool. Oh yeah, by the way, the four-wheel steer model only comes in white for some reason. I mean, don't get me wrong, the car looks good in white, but just a strange limitation. You also can't get a sunroof. Ugh, no sunroof, no manual, let's move on. This four-wheel steer thing doesn't interest me. It is also, as you would probably expect, the heaviest model by far. At 2,878 pounds, it's over 100 pounds heavier than the turbo hatch, the next heaviest model. After failing to make a splash with their four-wheel steering model, it was dropped from the lineup in 1989, and they were now trying it out on the MX-6, where it does probably fit better. But we'll talk about that one next week. They've also cut back the models, and there's only one turbo trim now. The sedans come in DX or LX, and the hatch comes in LX or turbo. The automatic adjusting suspension is standard on the turbo, but that's the only model you can get it on now, and it's also the only model with four-wheel disc brakes or optional ABS. A slight refresh comes for the 1990 model year with new wheels, a different grille, and new taillights. LX models now get body-colored door handles and mirrors. Inside, there's a different, slightly less interesting steering wheel, and that seems to be about all they changed. The trims are the same as last year, but they've gone back to calling the turbo model the GT. In 1991, they add a new LE trim to the four-door sedan, which was a luxury trim with leather interior. Ooh, fancy. AC was also standard on this trim, and it got body-colored side moldings and bumper trim. I guess this model wasn't very popular though. Unfortunately, I could not find a single picture of an LE626, not even like a terrible low-res one. I couldn't find any commercials or advertisements for it, and they don't even show any pictures of it in the 91 brochure. It doesn't seem like they tried very hard to sell it. So unfortunately, the closest thing I'll be able to show you is this 1991 626 that NFL running back Alfred Morris had restored by Mazda in 2013. I guess it was his first car, and he was still driving it after signing a $2.2 million contract with the Washington Redskins. I approve, sir. Anyway, they restored it with leather interior trimmings, but this was not an LE model originally. We can tell because of the manual crank windows and the black body side moldings. The crank windows give away that this was actually a DX model, so this probably doesn't look anything like a real LE interior would have. I guess you'll just have to squint and pretend. I won't be AI generating a fake retro picture of one like Dodge did. Yeah, that's not what the Neon looked like, bro. Too lazy to even dig out their own press pictures for a promo, so they AI generated it. What a disgrace. 1992 was the last year for this generation, and it had a very slimmed down lineup, available only in DX and LX sedans. No more hatchbacks. I guess they weren't selling well, and no more LE model either. But did they even sell any LEs? I don't know, I can't find one. I find it interesting that 5-doors didn't really take off in the 90s, like most people wanted sedans over them, despite the increased practicality a 5-door gives you. Yet just a decade or so later, sedans started getting cast aside like trash for SUVs, apparently because they were more practical. If you want practicality, why didn't you want 5-doors before? Because they were too low to the ground. For 1993, the 626, now built in Flat Rock, Michigan, has a much more rounded look to it, and it actually shares a lot of design similarities with the flagship 929 model. It's nice looking, if a little boring, but then again, this is a middle-class family sedan. That's kind of what sells in this market. If the audio sounds slightly different now, that's because I just had to go buy a new microphone to finish this video, since both of my other microphones just decided to stop working the same day. I'm mostly mad about my wireless DJI mics stopping working because those are pretty expensive and I've had them for like 2 years. And honestly, they've actually been problematic for the last year, but now they're not usable at all. Looks like it's not just new cars that suck. You can't buy anything decent nowadays. The touring sedan does not come back for this generation. The 626 is now 4 doors only. Well, there is the MX-6 Coupe, of course, but we'll talk about that next week. Other markets did get a hatchback, and it's kind of neat looking, but Mazda had learned by this point that Americans didn't want 5 doors. Give me an SUV or just give me a sedan, because reasons. The interior is very nice and also quite rounded. Everything is laid out well though and looks pretty good. Well, except the cup holders. Gauges are a simple 3-dial design with a tack on all trim levels. Nothing out of the ordinary here.
Serious drivers, however, will want a more complete gauge package.
The interior looks especially nice on the new top ES trim where it is outfitted in leather. It actually wasn't very easy to find pictures of this car. In fact, the 626 overall has been a pretty difficult car to find pictures and print material for. Somehow, there is way less information and media online about this car than the Renault Alliance I did last week. I can't believe the Renault Alliance was an easier car to make a video on than the 626. What is going on here? I guess I'm not the only one who had troubles finding pictures for this generation. Here's a little historic article a US dealer posted on their website a few years ago about the 1993 626 ES. This is the picture they went with. Well, if you've been watching this video, you know that's Alfred Morris's 1991 DX. That's not even the right generation. Did they just Google search and click on the first 626 picture that looked like it had leather? What makes this mistake even worse though is that this article, they didn't write it. It's almost a copy and paste of the 1993 626 ES car and driver review. They kind of changed a little bit of the wording slightly, but I don't know. When I went to school, at least, if I had handed this in as an assignment, it would have failed for plagiarism, but maybe the rules are different now. Anyway, they had to have been looking at this car and driver article, which has pictures. Here's the correct interior shot right here. So why didn't they just use this? I don't know what's going on with this. Trims are now DX, LX, and ES. DX models get manual locks, windows, and mirrors. 14-inch wheels with full covers, a tilt steering column, delay fade-out courtesy lights, and a driver's airbag is now standard equipment as well. LX models give you power mirrors, power windows and door locks, a tinted windshield band, cruise control, sun visor vanity mirrors, map lights, and a power moonroof is optional. Brakes are front disc rear drum on DX and LXs, but ABS is an available option to both of them, and selecting that option will give you discs on the rear as well. AC is standard on LX and ES models and optional on the DX. For DX and LX models, the engine is back down to a 2-liter, but it's a 4-valve per cylinder dual overhead cam engine now, and horsepower is still up from last year's non-turbo engine, and the slight torque dip is negligible. The ES trim gives you leather interior, 15-inch alloy wheels, 4-wheel disc brakes, fog lights, dual outlet exhaust, and under the hood for the first time in a 626 is a V6 engine. It's a dual overhead cam 2.5-liter, and power output is rated at 164 horsepower and 160 pound-feet of torque. All 3 trims come standard with a 5-speed manual, and a 4-speed auto is optional. I would suggest getting the manual. Oh, you always say that. No, I'm serious though, because unless you buy a 93 model or a V6, you really should get the stick. In 1994, all US-built 4-cylinder 626s started using Ford's CD4E automatic transmission, and they had a much higher failure rate. Reviews of the V6 626 ES, which seems to be the one that all the journalists were testing, were pretty positive, with most of them calling it a smooth and refined sports sedan. For 1994, a passenger side airbag gets added, and you can now get a V6 with the LX trimmings in the new LX V6 model. There are also 2 new package options, a luxury package available only to the LX, which gives you the power moonroof alarm system, 14-inch alloy wheels, and heated mirrors. A similar package is available to the LX V6, but it's called the premium package and includes a power driver's seat as well. Heated mirrors and ABS have been added as standard to the ES, and the ABS option has been removed from the DX. The dash actually gets changed slightly for 94, not just the passenger side where they added the airbag, but also on the driver's side. The black bezel around the gauge cluster is wider now, and now contains the side window defroster vent within it, but really the whole top of the dash is different too. For 1995, there is a convenience option package added to DX models, which adds AC, a cassette stereo, and carpeted floor mats. 1996 is the cosmetic refresh year. It's a fairly mild one. There's a new grille with a chrome outline and a band across the top, and the hood now has a raised section in the middle. On the back, a chrome outline is added around the license plate cutout. There's a slight power drop on the 4-cylinder engine, I assume due to emissions. On the interior, it doesn't look like much else has changed since the 94 update, except it does look like they maybe tried to improve the cup holders a bit, they removed the cover from them, and they look like they might be a little bigger. The final model year for this generation is 1997, and the only addition for this year is an appearance package for LX trims, which adds leather, a power moonroof, remote keyless entry with an alarm, a two-tone paint color, and chrome wheel covers. This generation is a little dull compared to the previous generations, but it's a nice looking refined family sedan, still with a hint of sport sedan, since it is built on the same chassis as the MX-6 and Ford Probe, and you can get it with a V6 and a manual, although I'm sure that was a very rare combination. Most probably sold as a 4-cylinder auto, and that might be why there aren't any left. When was the last time you saw one? Wait, I'm not done? They made another generation of this? Did they even sell any of these? The styling is kind of millennia inspired, it looks like, but nowhere near as nice looking. Pretty forgettable styling, to be honest. Probably why I don't remember these. The interior isn't as bad though. The top ES trim even has some wood grain, and I had no idea the oscillating vents stuck around this long. Trims are the same as last year with DX, LX, LX V6, and ES. The 4-cylinder engine now makes 125 horsepower and 127 pound-feet of torque, while the V6 is up to 170 horsepower and 163 pound-feet of torque. All trim levels are still available in either an auto or manual, and I know 90% of these would have sold as an auto, but it's cool that the option was still there even for the V6. In 1998, you couldn't get an Accord or a Camry with a V6 and a stick. That's because no one wanted it! I should mention, the Michigan-built 6th Gen 626 is quite different from the one the rest of the world got. To be honest, the one everyone else got looks a little more interesting if you ask me. And, unlike ours, was available in hatches and wagons too. The gauge cluster design is pretty much the same as last year, but the cup holder location has been improved, climate controls are now rotary knobs and are located up nice and high. Leather interior is reserved for the ES trim, and a CD player is now standard on all trims above DX. On ES models, it's a Bose audio system, and you can also get that on the LX V6 if you get the premium package, which also includes a moonroof, power driver's seat, and 15-inch alloy wheels. Those things are all standard on the ES. There is a DX convenience package and an LX luxury package that include pretty much the same stuff as those packages did last year. Most of the options and features are pretty similar to last year actually, but remote keyless entry is now standard on V6 models, or you can get it in the luxury package, and it also includes a power trunk release. 4-wheel disc brakes are standard on all V6 cars now, as is ABS and electronic traction control. ABS can be added as an option to the 4-cylinder LX. Mazda switched the trims around a little in 1999 by dropping the base DX trim and adding a 4-cylinder ES trim. Keyless entry was made standard on all models, along with variable speed intermittent wipers and a power antenna. 2000 brings a cosmetic update, and it's pretty mild, but for the most part just makes it worse. It looks like an MPV, and not the cool one. I guess the back looks okay, the taillights have kind of just been turned upside down now, and with the optional spoiler, it looks alright. Inside they've added some chrome around the gear selector, chrome interior door handles, and for some reason, annoying covers over the cup holders. ES V6 models now come with a double-din cassette CD player combo. A 5-speed is no longer offered on the 4-cylinder ES, but you can still get it on the V6 ES. The 4-cylinder engine gets a power increase up to 130 horsepower and torque, but this car still failed to make much of an impression. Edmunds described it as a bland bread-and-butter sedan that's not big enough for families and not sporty enough for enthusiasts, and I think that's a pretty good take. Unfortunately, we are now in what I consider the dark era for Mazda after Ford got a controlling interest, where they still had some good cars, yes, but a lot of them were either very forgettable, like this one, or just straight up Ford rebadges. It wasn't until the 2010s, after Ford divested from Mazda, that they started making more innovative models again, but I think their reputation took a lot of damage by then, and in my opinion, it's a big part of why Mazda is not in the top 3 Japanese automakers today. Nothing of note really changes for 2001, except for a slight drop in power to both engines, emissions I guess, but for the final 2002 model year, the 4-cylinder ES trim is dropped, leaving just LX, LX V6, and EX V6 trims. And that was the final model year for the 626. It was then replaced by the Mazda 6. I guess let me know if you want me to make a video on that one, and make sure you stay tuned for the MX-6 and Ford Probe video next week.